Whether you're a diehard sports fan, a hopeless romantic, or a comedy aficionado, the Xfinity 10G network was made for streaming it all. Worry less about buffering when streaming your favorite shows, movies, or live sports, and enjoy a better way to watch. Xfinity gives you a reliable connection for streaming, plus all the entertainment you love all in one place. Fear not, because now you can finally sit back, relax, and stream your favorite entertainment and sports like never before with the Xfinity 10G network.
This podcast is brought to you by 06 Duke grad Dave Olverson. Dave recently moved from New York City back to Durham and instantly fell in love with the food, entertainment, and community. He encourages all Duke grads to look at Durham as a place to live. You'll love it.
Hey there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode 99.0. We've been doing this for a while, but we're still loving it. Episode 90 of the Duke Basketball Report podcast. I'm your host this week. I am Jason Evans. I am joined, as always, partners in crime, gentlemen. I will start in Denver, Colorado. Sam Klein, how are you doing?
Jason, I am doing well. I am on episode 7 of Stranger Things, and I'm very excited to get this show over with so that I can finish.
I am only on episode 2 of Stranger Things. My problem is my wife doesn't watch it. She doesn't do the horror kind of thing. And so I have to find time. I have to carve out time by myself to do it, as opposed to doing it in conjunction with her. These are the perils of being married to someone who doesn't like Stranger Things. It's not an easy life. Donald Wine. Hey, Donald, what's your favorite? You're in Washington, D.C. What is your favorite show to stream, to binge?
Well, that's a good question. I haven't really binged anything in a while, except the last one that I binged was Last Chance U on Netflix, which I thought was pretty good. I did the 2 seasons there. I'm not on Stranger Things yet. I've seen the first couple episodes of season 1. I need to catch up. But tonight is Sunday Night Football. Lions are on. So let's get the show on the road.
I know you are a big, big Lions fan, but we are here to talk about Duke basketball because just a couple days ago, for the first time all year, the Blue Devils actually played basketball against an opponent other than themselves. It was an exhibition game, but still, it was a game. We got to see Duke in action against Northwest Missouri State. The Blue Devils won 93-60. I'm not sure if it was even as close as that, with like 12 minutes remaining or so when Coach K really called the dogs off. Duke was doubling them. It was, I forget, I want to say the score was like 78-39 or something in that kind of ballpark. But basically, Duke had doubled Northwest Missouri State. And it's worth noting Northwest Missouri State is a D2 school. This is not a Division I program, which is why it's an exhibition. But as D2 programs go, Northwest Missouri State is as good as it gets. Do you guys know what their record was last year?
35 and
incredible.
1.
Yeah.
35-1. They were 35-1. They won the D2 national title. This is as good as it gets at the Division II level. And Duke absolutely manhandled them. I have many notes, many things I can say, but I'm going to start with Sam. Sam, what did you see in this exhibition game? What did you like? What did you not like?
So I wanted to start by acknowledging back to our Countdown to Craziness review that we did last week. I think that when we were dividing up the players, we chose to pick interesting guys who we had probably not talked that much about prior to this season on the show. And so because of that, we didn't really talk about Grayson Allen all that much in Countdown to Craziness. And I saw some comments on the board on the, we post the thread about each episode. And one of the board comments we got from a couple listeners was that we should have talked about Grayson Allen more. And I think we had decided prior that we didn't need to, because we all know as Duke fans what Grayson Allen brings. And I guess that this game was kind of an even better reminder, because Allen was the star of the show. He made 5 3-pointers. He took 10 of them. He made 23 points. He was kind of all over the court. He was doing all the good Grayson Allen things and none of the bad Grayson Allen things. So I think that talking about this game, that's where you have to start, is that he looks polished. He looks ready. He looks in control. And I think that is
healthy,
kind of the best.
He looks healthy. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. All these things are are going to be important because, as we've noted, Allen is like the only really experienced guy on this team, so he has to be on the floor. And he was the other night. Looked really good, looked totally fluid. So I think that he was kind of the star of the show. Gary Trent.
Sam,
Yeah.
wait, I want to jump in really fast and just ask you a question about Grayson Allen. Do you think Grayson Allen was trying his hardest in this game?
No. I think that he looked like the most experienced person on either team. And I know that Northwest Missouri State has a lot of experienced players, but they're not D1 experienced. Grayson Allen, you could tell, was not exerting to his fullest because he didn't have to. Nobody else on the court is as kind of aware of Division I game speed as he is. And I think that showed. You know, he wasn't like driving when he didn't really have a lane and was trying to create it for himself. So I think that's a good question, and it's a good point that he didn't try too hard in this game, but he will one day in this season. But it didn't happen last night.
By the way, I did not ask that. I do not say that as any kind of criticism, not even remotely. I think he did what he needed to do, but he also wanted to let the other guys begin to feel themselves out at this level of competition.
It's like NFL preseason where you have your stars that do a couple of series and then they kind of rest while the other guys get used to the speed of this level. And I think that's what he was doing. Like he didn't drive. He didn't have a free throw at all because he didn't need to do that. He just kind of let the offense come to him. He was very smooth and then let the other guys really get a feel for things.
I think that he also let offensive sets develop in such a way that more guys got the ball before he went and attacked. And that's going to be important because he needs everybody else around him to feel comfortable before he, just starts driving at the hole like a madman, like he's capable of doing and like he's good at. But I appreciate that he was getting everyone involved.
So I think my takeaway on Grayson Allen is I think he's going to be the best player on the floor in every game we play, again, except maybe when we play Michigan State. Miles Bridges, perhaps. And look, we don't know how other players will develop and things like that.
Jason, Grayson Allen's not even the preseason ACC Player of the Year, according to the ACC media. So when Duke plays Notre Dame, Bonzie Colson might be better.
I'm very aware of what the media says. I am saying, this is Jason Evans, and I know better than they do. I think Grayson Allen will be the best player on the floor. Like I say, virtually every game we play this year, maybe Miles Bridges, maybe Bonzie Colson, but that's going to be about it. And having the best player on the floor is always a good thing. And Duke's going to have that wonderful luxury this year. All right, before I get into more of my stuff, I cut you off, Sam. You were about to start on Gary Trent, who is sort of the other big star of this game.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Give us your Gary Trent stuff.
So Gary Trent, I think that we're going to see this a lot this year where different guys shine in different moments. And Gary Trent certainly showed it the other night. Most importantly, he was making shots from outside. He had a few 3-pointers. He also had some longer twos that hopefully he will just step back and turn into threes, but looked very comfortable shooting. And I think we said, well, the kind of other general comment would be about the big men. I want to let Donald talk about the big men, but I will say that I think that it's important for us to look at Allen and Trent playing well in this game because we have to caveat any time we're commenting on big man performance against overmatched, undersized teams.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, let's start with the fact that they're very athletic, and we've talked about this. The word athletic has come out of our mouths a lot over the last few episodes when we're talking about the big men and just the team in general. This team is athletic, and you can tell where that is, most especially on the glass. We had 51 rebounds, 12 of them offensive, and it really means that these guys, even if they're missing, they're very active, going to the glass, they're trying to get rebounds, they're trying to create something inside. But what really, you balance that with the fact that these guys are very, very smooth with the ball. Marvin Bagley III had 16 points and 6 rebounds. He was 6 for 10 from the floor, but it didn't seem like there was times where he kind of took the game and was like, you could tell, okay, this kid's going to be great. It didn't feel like he dominated anything, but that's not to say that he didn't do that, because inside, with his passing, with his just moving around the court to create space for other guys, he was very, very good at being the man on the side with, and Grayson Allen and Gary Trent was having the show on the outside, and him and Wendell Carter Jr. were just dominating people inside. Wendell Carter Jr., I don't know if you guys remember at the end of the first half.
Oh, that was vicious.
He grabbed the ball over some guy, and then like I blinked for a second, and just all of a sudden, like that one blink, he's above the rim, and I don't know how he didn't come down with the entire roof of Cameron on top of him, because he destroyed that dunk.
I took
that's
a
what
note.
You want to see. Yeah.
I took a note about Wendell Carter's dunk here in my show notes. I wrote Wendell Carter, a fun dunk, and then underneath I wrote Justin Robinson, another fun dunk.
Yes. Oh yeah, that was fun too, and you could tell the team was really into that one.
So I thought there was something about Wendell Carter's dunk at the end of the first half, and it seems silly to read too much into one dunk or anything like that, but to me, that was the kind of powerful and explosive slam dunk that you don't see a lot out of Duke players.
Yeah.
To me, this is going to be sort of weird, and people are going to be like, "What are you talking about?" That that kind of felt to me like a Kentucky dunk. And not that I've necessarily put a ton of thought into this over the course of time, but Duke's big men are usually a little more skilled and maybe a little less explosive. And that felt explosive. Now, Carter is incredibly skilled. I mean, he went outside and he hit a 3-pointer. I thought he passed the ball really, really well. He moved like a gazelle all over the floor. And he showed a number of really, really nice moves in the post. So make no mistake about it, dude is skilled, but that was explosive in a way that I just don't feel like you see all that much. I mean, look, Jahlil Okafor wasn't explosive like that. Brandon Ingram certainly wasn't. Jason Tatum certainly wasn't. I guess Harry Giles could have been, but he was injured. We never saw it. Marques Bolden isn't, Marques Bolden. I was corrected on his pronunciation of his name. Marques Bolden isn't explosive like that. I have to go. The Plumlees, not really. I mean, you have to go back a ways. I'm not even sure. Carlos Boozer?
I think that Miles Plumlee had that kind of explosiveness. He just wasn't skilled enough, probably, with the basketball to.
And Okafor showed that at times. It wasn't the whole season, but there were times where he would throw down dunks like that and just kind of, yell. And it was, him and Winslow kind of had that singe where they both wanted to be emphatic with some of their dunks at key moments to kind of kind of motivate the team.
Does Carlos Boozer yell? I've never seen that before.
Carlos Boozer did back in the day. He was a yeller.
Carlos Boozer's a screamer.
But here's the thing. Like, I want to say with that dunk, I wouldn't call that Kentuckian, the dunk. I would call that an announcement dunk. I mean, if you think about it, like Wendell Carter Jr. is one of the most talented players in this class. He's I think he was number 3 or 4 until basically number 1, number 2, wherever you want to call it, until Bagley reclassified. You have him and they have a couple other guys. But that was an announcement dunk. That was announcing to the world, hey guys, I'm here too. And if he's the 3rd option in this offense or the 4th option in this offense, holy crap. That's awesome, because he is a very talented player, and he made himself known at different aspects of this game as well. What I want to say finally before I kick it back to you, Jason, I think between Bagley and Carter, what I see between those two guys better, and even DeLaurier, when he was in the game, he had 9 points and 7 boards. He was very active as well. But what I see between those 3 guys is they have a tendency, and they have the wherewithal to know where each other are on the court at all times, and they work well together. Their fluidity, where Carter will flow out to the wing and Bagley will move it to the high post, low post. The way that they move together as big men in the post is something that we haven't had in a long time between 2 guys, and I think that is what's going to be really effective for us with our interior defense and our interior offense, because if those guys are gelling together and can flow in and out of the basketball court at will, these guys are going to assert themselves wherever they want, and it's really going to affect our team for the good.
I want to talk a little bit deeper down the bench, because I think a really interesting rotational kind of thing happened in this game that is absolutely notable. And look, overmatched opponent, we were clearly going to win by a big number. So maybe I'm reading too much into it. And Coach K clearly tried to get, he got everybody minutes and folks got time, but a couple things became abundantly clear to me. One is there's no question that Javin DeLaurier is our 7th man, and I think he's very close to being our 6th man. I was incredibly impressed with the energy that he brought to the table. When he's in the game, he gets all the rebounds. All the rebounds belong to Javin. And
every single one.
Yeah.
It's a point where, you know how we talked about how some people just use their minutes and just kind of dominate for a minute. Like, there is nobody getting any loose ball or any rebound when number 12 is on the court. I think that's awesome. I think that's what's going to keep him on the court.
He is the definition of an energy player. And God, I mean, I love having a guy like that on your team. Come in for 5 minutes and be everywhere, all over the floor. And the opposing team is like seeing 14 of you blocking shots, altering shots, grabbing tons of rebounds. And by the way, if you're open for a wide open 3-pointer, go ahead and take it because you can make it. I love that out of DeLaurier. And I think there's no question in my mind that this kid's going to get, I don't know if it's 8, if it's 10, if it's 12, maybe it's as much as 15. He's going to play every game. He's going to be a significant player for us. And I really like the lineup, the athleticism that Duke puts out there with their big men. When we have DeLaurier and Carter and Bagley on the floor together at the same time. Like, if I'm an opposing team, I'm like, how am I getting any boards at all against these guys?
I think that the best thing about that lineup, well, like we had mentioned before about the possibility of 3 big lineup, and it really, you have to identify which guys are going to be able to play sort of out of position when they're on the court, like in those lineups. And I think that one of the keys we saw on Friday was that Bagley and Carter both took 3-pointers and were comfortable making them. We know DeLaurier can do that, and we know that DeLaurier can play the 3 on defense. And I didn't think that, outside of Bolden, I didn't think that any of the other bigs looked uncomfortable guarding on the perimeter. So I think it's totally reasonable looking ahead. And I know, Jason, you're going to want to get me to commit to a low minutes number for Jordan Goldwire. I think that the fact that all those guys can step out and make those shots, those big guys, means that the 3 big lineup is something that we will see, maybe not for long periods of time, but that we could see for, 2-3 minutes a game.
I think I have the perfect analogy.
Wait. Hold on. We got to go back on that. 2-3 minutes a game. You're going to see, if you consider DeLaurier a big, which I think you should, you're going to see Carter. You're going to see 3 of DeLaurier, Carter, Bagley, and Bolden in the game. I'll go a minimum of 20 minutes a game. We're gonna see.
What do you want to have this right now? Because I pulled up some stats, Jason. I got some stats. Not a ton, but do you want to hear something that I looked up?
Go ahead. All
right. So as it pertains to the minutes distribution, the recent successful Duke team that I think looks like this team not in terms of their style of play, but in terms of size, is 2010, where Duke had 3, heavy minutes perimeter players. That was Shire, Smith, and Singler. Those guys got the lion's share of the minutes on the perimeter. And then Duke had 4 big men who were rotating in and out. Towards the end of the season, Zubek and Thomas were playing most of the minutes down low.
The Plumlee brothers barely played late in the season, but yes.
But for most of the season, the Plumlees were in there a lot, both of them. And I think that the kind of the comparison to this team is that we do have a number of bigs who can play. And that if Duke has the ability to have the 3 perimeter guys stay out there for a long time, which I think that all of Allen, Trent, and Duval can, Coach K is going to let them play. So I'm not going to be surprised if Grayson Allen is averaging 38 minutes a game, and then Trent and Duval are averaging close to 35. I don't know if that's necessarily going to be the case, but Andre Dawkins only in that season where we think about Duke having a short bench, especially on the perimeter, Andre Dawkins was the super sub for all the perimeter players he only played 12 minutes a game. He only logged 477 minutes for the season. So I think that, whether we're talking about Goldwire or we're talking about having the three big lineup, I think that Coach K is going to be more comfortable having Trent Carter Trent Allen and Duval out there for most of the game, as long as they can, handle the workload and don't get in foul trouble.
Well, you have taken us on the cusp of what we're going to discuss next week, folks. A preview of next week. Next week is our predictions week.
Yeah, so I intended that. I want people to know where I stand on this before we get there, because we've done this episode in the past. A couple years ago, I introduced it without telling you guys. I was just like I made you all do like points and rebounds and minutes predictions without giving you time to prepare, which was fun, as I recall. I think we had a good time.
Yes.
But so next week when we do that, we'll be more prepared for it. I think we're going to do it similar to the way we did last year. Writing down all the bets and stuff. But yeah, looking ahead, just to echo you, Jason. Next week is kind of the big season preview, because we'll have all of the preseason out of the way, and we'll be looking ahead to the first weekend of games. They're not games against major opponents, but they are regular season games that count towards the stats.
Yes, and we'll be making all our predictions next week. But as a result of us talking about that, we got off track from something I wanted to bring up.
All right, go ahead.
We talked about DeLaurier. I think is clearly our seventh man, and may even play as much as Marques Bolden, who, again, brief sidetrack here. Bolden still needs a lot of work. He has moments, but it still kind of seems to me like the game's maybe moving a little too fast for him. He's not as skilled and as comfortable either with post moves or with the ball in his hands as the other bigs are. I don't think he's quite using his length as well as I would hope. Look, I'm not down on him. Not really down on him, and I think he's going to be a very valuable player for us. And there'll be games where guys get in foul trouble, and Marques is going to be really useful, and I think he can be a defensive force. He's not anywhere close to where Carter and Bagley are at this point in terms of skill and in terms of confidence.
I think
his energy isn't close to DeLaurier. Go ahead.
Certainly. Yeah, I definitely agree with the last point about his energy, and that is important, I think, for getting minutes. It's a hard thing to quantify for him, but you can tell by watching him. I think that the best moment he had in this game was when he backed down the one defender and just ISO'd him right to the basket. But he had that guy by about 6 inches and maybe 40 pounds. So he's not going to be able to do that against bigger players. And I'm with you, Jason. I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised if DeLaurier ends up ahead of him in the rotation, especially if Coach K does decide to get a little bit more creative with playing three big men all at the same time.
Yeah. All right. So now finally we keep on getting diverted, and I'm the one who does the diverting. It's my fault. I'm finally going to get to the guy who I think is going to be our eighth man. It's Jordan Goldwire, who in the 2 weeks ago, if you'd said to me that Jordan Goldwire was going to play less than 10 minutes on the entire season, I would have said, yep, not 10 minutes per game, 10 minutes total on the entire season. This is a kid who was not recruited really, by any other Power 5 conference school, I don't think. Certainly, not in a big way. He didn't get a lot of D1 offers. The presumption was that Duke was bringing him in mostly as a practice player, to be a deep on the bench point guard who would sort of run the scout team in practice or something like that. That there was no way this guy was going to play for us. And Jordan Goldwire is, at least based on this first exhibition game, is in the rotation, and he's in the rotation ahead of Alex O'Connell and ahead of Jordan Tucker and ahead of these other guys are on the bench. He's ahead of Rankovic. He's ahead of Jack White. He's ahead of Justin Robinson. Jordan Goldwire is the only one of those bench guys other than Bolden and DeLaurier who actively played with the other starters. Alex O'Connell had a couple minutes at the very, very end of the first half. Duke was leading by more than 20 points. And Alex O'Connell, again, had a couple minutes when the first, 8 or 10 minutes of the second half when Duke still had their starters in the game. but Goldwire was more in the rotation. He played more than O'Connell did with the main starters, and it absolutely looked to me like, every minute that Trevon Duval is not on the floor is a minute that Jordan Goldwire is. Do you guys? And by the way, I thought Goldwire again played very good defense. Again, he's hustling around the floor, doing a nice job. He didn't score. Who cares? That's not his role. Do you guys disagree with me, Donald? I'll put it to you. Is Jordan Goldwire our eighth man, and how shocked are you at that?
I'm not really shocked based on what I seen in the open practice. I guess the open scrimmage that they had a few weeks ago, and Countdown to Craziness. I'm not entirely shocked, but I think it's a good thing because like we said last week, he proves every single time we see him that he belongs on the court with these other guys. And when you have that factor, then you can't. I mean, he's going to move up the ranks a little bit further. I agree with you. I think DeLaurier is eventually going to be our sixth man off the bench. But I think Goldwire is going to have that opportunity to be one of those, one of the first guards off the bench. And just the fact that he can, he really can play defense. He can flow well in the offense. He can pick and choose where he needs to be. He can rebound. I mean, he got 5 rebounds. He only attempted 1 shot, but I don't think you can take that and say, he didn't belong on the court, because every minute that he was on the court, there was no, hey, Jordan Goldwire needs to go. He did very, very well, I think. And I think that's, when you see that, find that gold or find that gem, hidden, that guy that probably, people thought was not going to get that much playing time, and now he's going to be our 8th, 7th man, that's incredible. And I think that's only going to make everyone else pick up their game. That's going to make our team better.
There's one significant player we haven't spoken about yet. To some extent, he's the guy who's still a little bit of an enigma. And that's Trevon Duval. This is a kid. He's the number 1 rated point guard freshman, recruit in college basketball. This kid was supposed to come in and absolutely, light things up. This is a guy who a lot of people were talking about as a lottery pick, one and done lottery pick. And he is an incredibly explosive athlete. He has great court vision, but it feels like he's still trying to figure out how to play point guard at this level. And his shot is just he is not a good shooter yet. And I think his confidence isn't there, not by a long shot, at least not yet. But I mean, athletic freak, absolutely athletic freak. And once he gets more experience, I think he's going to be scary, scary good. But Sam, let me toss it to you on Trevon Duval. What were your impressions of him?
From what we've seen so far, and I don't watch a lot of recruiting videos or anything like that, I'm kind of surprised that he is that he's a point guard, and that he hasn't kind of turned more into like a swing man. He is a little bigger. Like you said, he's very athletic, and it's sort of a weird thing. I would say that relating back to your stance on Jordan Goldwire, the one scenario where I could see where I think he gets a lot of minutes is where Duval doesn't turn into a point guard who can play 30 plus minutes a game in the ACC, because as we saw last year, Grayson Allen isn't super great at playing point guard. He can do it in very limited bursts, and he has some of that skill set, but not all of it. And he's definitely better when he's given the opportunity to create off the ball. So if Goldwire is the only one who can back up for a significant portion of the game, can back up point guard, then yeah, he could get those minutes. And so far, I think that's maybe the strongest thing that is in support of Goldwire's minutes is Duval not looking like the 35-minute a game player. But I think that we're going to see him progress very quickly. I think that he's probably still getting used to playing with all these guys, and it's not just him who had that problem. I think Marvin Bagley had a couple of weird miscues with the ball that turned into turnovers early in the game. So these guys are probably all just still figuring each other out. The spacing. I think the other thing that you can watch that shows their youth is the spacing on the runouts and on the fast breaks. I think experienced teams, especially when they're experienced together, can feed off of everybody else and know what lanes everybody likes to take when they're on the fast break. There were a lot of times on Friday where not just Duval, but other freshmen were kind of running into each other or running into the same lanes, and Allen was kind of directing traffic around there. You'll see that improve, I think, throughout the season, especially given how well this team's going to rebound and then hopefully make those outlet passes and have fast breaks.
Yeah, well, and I would say about Duval that despite the fact that I think his shot doesn't look great, he is fabulous at taking the ball to the hole. He pushes the ball up the floor really, really fast, which you were just pointing out. I mean, when Duke gets rebounds, you get it in his hands, you're in an instant fast break. He's one of these point guards who gets the ball up the floor very, very quickly, which is going to be fabulous with Duke having a ton of guys who can finish above the rim, Duval being one of them, but other players as well. And then the other thing to note about him is, I mean, look, in this game, he had 5 assists and only 1 turnover. I'll take a 5-to-1 assist to turnover ratio out of my point guard all day long. If he can't hit 3-pointers, if that's the one bad thing we're going to say about him, he's not really taking a lot of shots from the outside. If he's doing everything else the point guard's supposed to do, which so far he is, I'll take that, put that in my back pocket, and I'll be perfectly happy about it. So one other thing I want to do before we wrap up everything on the exhibition, this was exhibition number 1. Next week, we have exhibition number 2, and I'll credit Sam. This was Sam's idea. So, Sam, I'm going to come to you first. Sam, I want to hear from you as we wrap up our exhibition stuff. What is the one thing you're looking for Duke to do? What is one thing you're looking to see differently in exhibition number 2 versus what we saw in exhibition number 1?
I think you hit on it with Trevon Duval. I want to see better passing. I want to see better ball control, and going back, kind of into that same discussion, better ball control overall from all the guys. I want, I'm not as concerned about the bench minutes. I think that we will see the bench guys a lot, but it's really more important that the top 7-8 guys get comfortable playing together. And like I said, the ways you can tell that they are comfortable with each other are the ways that they play on fast break, and then how well they take care of the ball, particularly when they're passing. And we didn't see that against Northwest Missouri State. I hope that we get to see it against Bowie. I think it's Bowie who we're playing this week, or Bowie State.
It is Bowie State.
Bowie State. I want to see that going forward. I think that a huge factor for this team is going to be turnovers, because the inexperience is going to force them into tough situations. And once you get to ACC season, there are so many teams, teams like Virginia, Louisville, who play really tough defense, Miami, that will force those turnovers. And if they keep being light with the ball the way they were this week, that could be a problem spot for this team.
Donald, on to you. What are you hoping to see in exhibition number 2 that we haven't seen in exhibition number 1?
Well, I was going to touch on the turnovers like Sam did. So I will talk about the fact that I'd like to see us shoot a little bit better from the outside. We were 8 for 24 from 3-point land. And we've talked about how our team is not going to be a really good shooting team. We're going to focus more on the inside. But I think that balance still needs to be there. We need to make some of those threes so that it really gives the defense an honest effort and stretches them out. That's going to help our interior offense as well. So I'd like to see us shoot a little bit better in addition to everything that Sam said, because I think if we can do that, if we can really start getting that down and getting confidence from our outside shots, that's really going to make our defense or our offense that much more potent.
So I'm going to go on the other side of the ball. There's some things I want to see us do on defense. First of all, from a defensive statistical standpoint, not that stats are the best way to measure defense, because they aren't, but Duke only had 3 steals in this game. And I'd really like to see us turn up the pressure and cover guys in a way that generates a few more steals, more fast break opportunities. And the other thing that stuck out to me in this game,
hey, Jason, I have a question for you about the steals, because I think it is a good metric to look at. Do you think that Duke is going to get more of those opportunities at point guard or like among the bigs? Because Duval, I think, has all that athleticism. I think that the bigs look a lot they look a lot more comfortable in their defensive roles so far than Duval does.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I mean, you raised this caveat at the very beginning of this conversation regarding the bigs. Look, it's easy for Bagley and Carter and Bolden and the such to feel comfortable defensively in these games because they're playing against guys that are, 3, 4, 5, 6 inches shorter than they are. When you play these Division II teams, the biggest disparity is the size and strength of the big men. And so our bigs are going to feel comfortable because they're playing against guys who are massively smaller and at a lower level. To some extent, the guards, Justin Pitts, who I thought Duval did a great job on. Justin Pitts of Northwest Missouri State is the defending Division II Player of the Year at point guard. He's probably the best player in Division II basketball, and he's a point guard. So Duval was matched up with a guy who absolutely is a really strong player versus Duke's big men were really playing against guys who don't have a prayer of competing at the Division I kind of level. And by the way, it's worth noting that Duval forced Pitts into a terrible game. I mean, this is a guy who averaged like 25, 28 points a game. I forget something like that last year. Against Duke, he only had 7 points on 3 of 14 shooting. But I want to get back to what I mentioned steals, and I didn't want to get hung up on steals. The stat that to me was the most concerning, and you're going to laugh, this is going to seem kind of weird. It's that Northwest Missouri State shot so poorly from the field. And I don't think that was on Duke's defense. I think that Northwest Missouri State missed a lot of open shots. And so the thing I'm looking to see from Duke next game is that we close out better. We don't leave guys open on the perimeter quite as much. I mean, look, in the first half, Northwest Missouri State probably missed at least 6 or 7 3-pointers where they were wide open. I mean, they had a guy, he was able to get his feet set, get a good look at the rim, and then he missed the 3-pointer. And I know a lot of that was Duke was helping in the lane when Pitts was driving, so that he wouldn't get a good look. And that was a sound defensive strategy. Makes a lot of sense, and I'm glad that we did that. But at the same time, in the second scrimmage, second exhibition, I really want to see Duke do a better job of not giving up wide open shots. I'm not saying we would have lost this game, but if we'd played a better team, if we'd played a team that hit more of their wide open 3-pointers, it could have been far, far more competitive. And that's something that I'm really hoping we'll see as a difference as the Duke defense gets a little bit better as we advance toward the season. Defense to me is going to be a really, really important thing for these guys.
I think that you saw in this game too many, and it's kind of another way of phrasing what you just said, too many instances of Duke defenders lunging at Northwest Missouri State players who were launching threes over their outstretched arms. And against a Division II opponent, maybe that, it's fine because they're not expected to make as many of those. But once they get into the meat of their schedule, they have to keep those guys covered.
Yeah, and the other point about that is, and you saw Grayson Allen did this toward the very, very beginning of the game. He was open on the wing, and he gave a little pump fake, and his defender flew past him because he thought Grayson was going to take a 3, and Grayson went in and got a layup instead. And Northwest Missouri State never really attempted to do that at all against a legitimate D1 opponent. You're going to see teams do that. If Duke is lunging at them, if Duke is scrambling to cover a 3-point guy, he's going to give you a little pump fake and then go around you. And suddenly Duke's going to be in a really bad position on a defensive standpoint, potentially giving up a really short range kind of shot, a really high percentage shot by the opposition. I think we pretty much wrapped up everything we can say about this exhibition. The only thing I would add is there are going to be people who say, how did you guys not talk more about Gary Trent? Gary Trent was awesome in this game. His mid-range jumper is a thing of beauty. I'm a little afraid because he takes a very low percentage shot from the standpoint of what the guys who do metrics and things like that would say. Advanced basketball metrics say that Gary Trent is taking a shot he shouldn't be taking, but he made a heck of a lot of them. So, folks, I just want to make sure no one's upset. We talked about Gary Trent, and he was great.
I think it was interesting that Gerald Henderson was in the booth because I see a lot of similarity in their games, especially when it comes to attempting to use that mid-range jumper as a weapon, on a regular basis.
This podcast is brought to you by 06 Duke grad Dave Olverson. Dave recently moved from New York City back to Durham and is enjoying the amazing food that Durham has to offer. A small sample of his favorites include ramen at Dashi, authentic Italian at Gushing, and his absolute favorite, the Salt Box, which is a shack that serves seafood that comes fresh from the Carolina coast. If you have any questions about life in Durham, you can email Dave at durhamdavedbr@gmail.com. Thank you, Dave, for sponsoring this podcast.
And I want to add, I think it is so cool. Not only is Dave a great guy for sponsoring the podcast, and again, we thank him for that, but the fact that he wants to encourage folks to move back to Durham is just a really cool message, and it's just a fabulous thing. And Dave, we really appreciate what you're doing for us and what you're doing for the city of Durham as well. Okay, gentlemen, we're done with basketball, and we're going to move on really quickly to football. This is not a subject I'm looking forward to talking about. The Blue Devils played Virginia Tech over the weekend. It is worth noting that this Virginia Tech team is really, really good. They are now 7-1. They're knocking on the door of the top 10 nationally, and they look like they belong in that kind of conversation. And Virginia Tech is clearly angling for a shot at Clemson in the ACC championship game. And I think that, Virginia Tech probably thinks there's still a chance that they could make the college football national championship. If not, they're certainly looking at a high profile bowl game. So the Blue Devils went down 24-3. I'm not sure if it was even that close. Virginia Tech had a couple times they went for it on fourth down and didn't make it. If they had made those plays, I think that it could have been an even uglier final score in this game. But Donald, I'll go to you first. Any comments on football? And let me start the conversation with this. Actually, before I go to you, I'll start with this. So Duke has 3 games left. We need to win 2 of them to make it to bowl eligibility. We play at Army. We then play Georgia Tech at home. Then we play at Wake Forest. And the question I'm going to ask you guys is, do you all see 2 more wins for Duke in those 3 games? And before you answer, I'm just going to give you this dose of reality. Jeff Sagarin, who does probably the best college football computer rankings around, or at least the ones that have been around the longest. Jeff Sagarin says that Duke will be an underdog in all 3 of those games. His rankings say that Duke is about a 5 or 6 point underdog at Army. We're about a 17-point underdog to Georgia Tech, even though the game is at home. And against Wake Forest, who's a team that you would have thought Duke would have a good chance against. They haven't been that good in a while. Jeff Sagarin says that Wake is the 2nd best team in the ACC Atlantic Division. He says that Wake should beat Duke by about 20 points. So with that dose of bad news, Donald, do we have a prayer of winning 2 games and making it to bowl eligibility?
Well, I think the best part of our season is going to be this weekend. We are not playing. Because that is what I think this team really needs to kind of say, look, this is a 3-game season now. We have to narrow it down, and we have to win 2 of them to become bowl eligible. Do I see it? I'm going to remain positive and say yes. I'm going to say that we shock Army, and I'm going to say we shock Wake. And I'm not – don't ask me what scientific rationale I got to get to those 2, but I'm just going to say positivity is what's going to keep me – hoping that this team will rebound, use the bye week to really hone on the basics, get back to the specifics of the offense that was so great at the beginning of the season, or at least was capable, and the defense that was really great at the beginning of the season. If we could get back to those elements, I think we have 2 wins left in us. But we really need to use this bye week this weekend to really, really get back to those bare basics, to get back to the Duke gang football that we've seen, that we saw in September. If we can bring September into November, we're going to get 2 wins out of these 3 games. But if not, we're going to be at home watching bowl games without Duke in them. All
right, Sam, your turn. You got 2 wins in you?
I've got one win over Army and a really good APR score that gets Duke a final bowl spot at 5-7. Does that
Hey man, that counts.
2 wins?
That counts.
I'm not necessarily confident about any of these games. In addition to Sagarin, which is also a good ranking system, I also enjoy the Football Outsiders S&P Plus rankings, which I think SB Nation's Bill Connolly does, and Duke is ranked well below all of their remaining opponents. But I think that they can steal one from Army, and I think Donald really hit on it. It's the offense is what's really struggling. I think that the defense is defense has issues in ways that overmatched opponents normally have. You know, the receivers are a lot bigger than our corners. I think that our corners, Fields made a couple of really nice plays against Virginia Tech, but the Virginia Tech team is going to score 24 points on Duke. It's a matter of Duke being able to keep up, and they continue week after week to have trouble converting in the red zone, whether it's getting touchdowns or kind of making the right calls. I find myself this year, and I really would have liked to kind of look more deeply at this. I find myself this year questioning more the play calling, the offensive play calling, especially in the red zone. I think that
You think?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, relative to years past, and I know that Zach Roper is a relatively new offensive coordinator. It's so confounding, and we said a few weeks ago the weird thing about this Duke team is that Coach Cutcliffe seems to still love using the Kinnett package with Quentin Harris, and it's not that effective. And I think that it's doing a lot more harm than it is good, and that really hurts us when they're in those scoring opportunities. They're not getting touchdowns when they're close. They're giving up turnovers. They're getting sacked. It's just the offense is such a mess, and I don't know which playmaker I think is going to emerge to be better, to take more of the lion's share. And it's tough because we did expect a lot out of the passing game this year, and it just hasn't materialized.
I will go back to the guy I've spoken about all season long. I don't understand why Britton Brown can't get playing time. Britton Brown had 2 carries against Virginia Tech. 2 carries. This is a guy who, I swear, when he touches the ball, good things tend to happen. And we just don't get him the ball at all. I was sure he was hurt. I'll be honest. The way his playing time, he was sort of splitting touches with Sean Wilson a few weeks ago when Duke was doing better on offense, and gradually Wilson's been getting more and more, and Brown's been getting less and less. Although I shouldn't say Wilson's been getting more and more. It's that Wilson still still gets about the same or close to the same that he was getting earlier in the year, and Brown's getting less and less. Duke's abandoned the run game to some extent thus far. The past several weeks. I don't know why, but that's just what Zach Roper has chosen to do. I guess Zach Roper's smarter than all the rest of us. But I don't understand why Britton Brown isn't playing. And I thought maybe he was hurt. I thought he had to be injured. And I spoke to a couple folks who would know about these things, and they've assured me that he's not hurt at all. And they also said the same thing I did. They are utterly flummoxed. They don't understand why Britton Brown isn't playing more. Doesn't make any sense. Our offense is broken. And I've said that like 4 or 5 weeks in a row now. Our offense is broken. We only gave up 24 points to Virginia Tech, and it's not that bad. But the offense scored 3. I
mean, look at you want a great example? Boston College beat Florida State 35-3 this weekend. Why did Duke only score 10 points against Florida State?
Yeah. Well, BC's better than Florida State.
Well,
but you're right. I mean, this Virginia Tech's a good defensive team. I mean, not that that's an excuse for only getting 3 points, but Virginia Tech at least is a good defensive team. Duke's played bad defensive teams, and we haven't scored. Right. It's broken. The passing game especially is broken. The run game we're not using very much, and the guy that I think could be part of the answer is not Britton Brown is not getting the ball. I don't know if there's anything more we need to say. As much as I'd love to be optimistic, I will be the guy who is the dose of reality. Maybe Army, but the game's at Army. But we're not beating Georgia Tech or Wake Forest. We're just not beating either one of those teams. I don't think so. And it's not just because Jeff Sagarin says we're going to be more than a 2-touchdown underdog in both those games. I've seen both of them play, and they're better than Duke. If we win 2 out of our next 3, it's because something fundamentally changed during the off week, and we found something that has been missing, because the team that we've rolled out there the past several weeks is not winning another game this year. Okay, I'm sorry that was such a downer. I'm sorry that the football commentary, especially from me, was so depressing. But we're going to hopefully leave on a better note. It's time for parting shots. I hope you guys have something good, because I've actually got my parting shots aren't that wonderful. They're sort of sad as well. But I'll go to Donald first. Donald, what you got for me as a parting shot?
Well, I'd like to send a shout out to the Duke women's soccer team who.
Love
They,
this one.
This one, look, this team is ridiculous. Okay. They won their 17th straight game. They lost the first game of the season, and since then have gone on a tear. 17 straight games, including the entire ACC, and they captured their first ever conference title, or their first conference title since 2011, their first regular season one. They beat number 10 Virginia a couple days ago, 1-0, and won the regular season championship trophy. Congratulations, women. Look, if you guys have not seen these women play, they are phenomenal. And I'm really proud of the fact that this team they've been really the team that no one really talks about during the season. They talk about UNC, they talk about Virginia. They're not talking about Duke. And this Duke team is really, really good. It sets up very well for the ACC tournament and the NCAA tournament. But Duke women, take a bow. You guys are regular season conference champions, and it's very well deserved.
That's a great one. I'm so glad you mentioned them. I'll admit that I hadn't paid much attention, but 17 wins in a row, I noticed that. And what they've done is truly, truly, truly special. Sam, what's your parting shot?
I'm going to a couple of Duke games in November. So the first one being the aforementioned Army football game at West Point. I'm very excited to check that out.
Have you ever been to a game at West Point? Have you ever been to West Point?
I have been to games at the other 2 service academies, both of which were experiences I recommend, and I'm very excited to finally check off the third, which is West Point. So I'm really excited about that. I'm going up there to New York for that weekend. We're taking the ferry from Manhattan to go to the game, which I guess is a cool thing that people do. So if you're at the game, say hi. And then a few days later, I just realized this week that I could fly to Chicago for the Champions Classic. So I'm going actually with a friend of mine who's a big Michigan State fan to the Champions Classic to see Duke play Michigan State and Kansas play Kentucky, which I think is going to be an excellent night of basketball early in the season.
Well, according to the preseason polls, that's the number 1 and 2 teams and the number 3 and 4 teams playing each other. So I'd say that's a good way to start off the college basketball season.
Pretty good. So I'll be there, and I don't know. Maybe we can figure out something I can do for the podcast while I'm out there. I don't know. I could live stream something or I don't know. Throw suggestions in the thread for this week if you think that there's something fun we could do for the podcast for this game, because I'm going to such a high profile game, but also maybe games in the future that we could do fun activities for the podcast.
I think whatever you do has to involve you eating an entire Chicago deep dish pizza. Don't actually do that. Just have a slice.
I could do it. I've come close before.
This is not something unless you know the size. Like, oh, I ate an 8-inch or a 12-inch or a 16 or a 20. I mean, it depends on the size of the pizza as to whether or not this is actually doable.
I'm also flying back to Denver like first thing the next morning to go back to work on Wednesday. So, it could be problematic, but keep brainstorming.
So, gentlemen, it's time for my parting shot. And I wish I didn't have to do this one, but I do, because I want everyone to know about these guys. There are two really great Duke fans, folks who've been a part of the DBR for a long, long time, and they sort of need your prayers and your thoughts for healing. James Armstrong. Anyone who doesn't know James Armstrong doesn't know about Duke as an online community. James wrote the original code for the DBR many, many years ago. He's the guy who wrote the code for the boards for the first Duke forum many, many years ago. Just an incredible Duke fan, someone who's been involved with the DBR for a long, long, long time. James needs a kidney transplant. He's had several extended stays in the hospital recently. He's in a big fight with his insurance company because they're limiting the places he can go to get his transplant. And I just want everyone, have him in your thoughts and prayers. If you're someone who could maybe help him with the insurance thing, or if you want to donate a kidney, I don't know. Feel free to reach out to us at DBRPodcast@gmail.com, DBRPodcast@gmail.com, and we'll get you in touch with James. Even if you just want to send him a note to wish him well as he's going through a tough battle. Like I said, he needs a kidney. And then the other one, this is a little bit better. Al Featherston, Feather, who has written about Duke for many publications. He's authored 2 books on Duke hoops, and he is a frequent, loved contributor to the DBR, to the main page. He's also on the forums. I'm not going to get into, he has sort of a secret name on the forums, and I'm not going to get into that. I don't want to give away his identity, but Al is as good a Duke fan in terms of communicating with the rest of the Duke community as there is out there. And some folks noticed that Al hadn't been around the forums and hadn't been writing as much lately as they'd expected, and they asked. And so I reached out to Al, and I found out that he had heart bypass surgery fairly recently, but he's doing well now. He says his recovery is going great. He's not in Durham at the moment, but he expects to be back in Durham and back attending games, going to Duke games in just a couple of weeks, by mid-November or so. Al, I just want to say we miss you. We miss your contributions to the boards. We miss your contributions to the DBR. And we can't wait to read your always really smart, brilliant insights again. And you and James both are a major reason why so many of us come to the DBR and why we have gone online and found a home with other Duke fans. And we wouldn't be here without guys like both of you. So wishing both of you all of our prayers as you guys heal from some tough health stuff.
Absolutely. And, Al's also a friend of the podcast. He recorded an interview with us way back. I don't know how long, maybe about a year ago. That he was on the podcast, but we wish both of them well. We hope you guys get well soon, and looking forward to having you guys back around, back in the trenches with us.
Absolutely. So, folks, that's going to wrap it up for us here on the DBR podcast, the Duke Basketball Report podcast, for this week, for episode number 90. By the way, if you love this podcast, please rate us on iTunes. Go to iTunes. We know there are thousands of you who listen every week, which is kind of amazing, but there are thousands of you who listen. So we need to have thousands of ratings on iTunes. It helps us out with search results on iTunes. It helps our reputation on iTunes. And so if you love the podcast, please rate us on iTunes. If you don't love the podcast, if you have any complaints, please email us. Email us at dbrpodcast@gmail.com. And by the way, if you're interested in being a sponsor, we heard about Dave, who sponsored us this week. We're so thankful to him. If you have a message that you want to send out to other Duke fans, email us at dbrpodcast@gmail.com. We're happy to take new sponsors on board. We're happy to get your message out there, just like we did with Dave, and the way he's encouraging folks to come move to Durham, which is a great, great community. But that's it for this week's edition of the show. Episode number 90 in the books. Episode 91 coming up at you very, very soon. And 91 will be the prediction episode, as we will give our thoughts on the upcoming Duke basketball season. That's it for me. I'm Jason Evans. For Sam Klein and Donald Wine, we want to thank you so much for joining us. And Duke Band, it's your turn. Take us home.